Hey, what's going on, guys? This is gonna be my bare bones guide for 6.0 plus Immortal Juggernaut. This isn't gonna be any sort of nightmare ready, super optimized guide by any means. Bare bones is supposed to be a way of getting people into the spec with a gist of what's going on, a rotation, maybe rough stats to shoot for, that kind of thing. So there's a lot more intricacies to a lot of the classes that I'm going to do in bare bones that I'm not going to go over, because if you're here looking for a get you started type of guide, you're probably not looking for all those intricacies, and once you learn the class, you're going to be able to put those in, as you go. So first things first, I'm going to go over talents. This is just a super rough. This is just what I use. I've played enough of this. I kind of just pick what I want. Obviously, this kind of stuff's going to change from fight to fight if you're super concerned with it. But when you're just getting into it, you can kind of go with what you want. Some things are a little bit more necessary, like this reducing your enraged defense cooldown's a big deal, because enraged defense is a super useful defensive that Juggernauts have access to. Force charge, resetting the cooldown on your interrupt, super useful. I take piercing chill just because I like using it in AoE situations to help build that threat a little bit easier. Up to you, personal preference if you want it or not. Sonic wall, whenever you AoE taunt, giving out a damage barrier is useful. I take sweeping slash for the same reason, AoE threat. You can kind of just read through these, pick what you want. A super nice thing that Jugs have and Assassins have, I don't think Power Techs have it, is Consuming Rage and Dear Pain, removing cleansable effects, so you have a self-cleanse if you need it. Super useful to have. But things like Seething Hatred, Unstoppable, you might want to look into things like that. So, your passives, I'm not going to go over all of these. Any class, any spec you want to play, I would take the minute it takes to read through each of these passive abilities, because it will change things. Like Force Grip, making your Force Choke do more damage and more threat, making it a useful ability to have. Don't be afraid to use it. Gives you some rage, does good damage, good threat. So stuff like that, super. Force Scream becoming a defensive is in the passives as well. Just take a second, read through all of these, and you'll probably understand what you're doing a whole lot better just by reading these. You can learn some classes just by reading these without looking at a guide or anything, get a gist of how it works. I'm going to take us to the ship, and we'll go over my rotation and some of the defensives and stuff like that, and hopefully it'll get you started with where you want to go when it comes to Juggernaut tanking. Alrighty, so real quick before we go over abilities, tacticals and set bonuses, again, if you're just starting, you can probably just read the ones you want. If they augment your gameplay in a certain style that you like, you can take those. I use what I like to use. You can do the same. What I use is 6-piece Lord of Pain. This will eventually become an augmented or amplified champion piece. Don't worry about this, but I use the Lord of Pain chest piece and the Leviathan's Hide tactical, which makes your crushing blow, when it hits multiple enemies, you get 2.5% damage reduction per enemy you hit. So between Lord of Pain and Leviathan's Hide, when you AoE taunt a pull, you're getting a ton of damage reduction from Lord of Pain, and then when you crushing blow, you're going to get more. You can almost max out your damage reduction completely just with this combo, which I think is fun to use, which is why I use it. Stats, I would probably just shoot for like 3k absorb, 3k shield, and maybe 6k defense. I've got purple augments in most of my stuff, so stats are kind of all over the place. It's been a little bit weird trying to find that sort of information since 6.0 came out, so take the stat numbers with a grain of salt. It might change, probably will change, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. When it comes to abilities, I'll run over your defensives real quick, which is a big reason Juggernaut's such a fun class to play, is because you have so many at your disposal. The first one I'm going to talk about is Saber Reflect. As much as it is a defensive cooldown, it's almost an active part of your rotation because of what it does. You can take a talent. Yeah, it's this one. So Saber Reflect lasts longer, and if you're in tank form, it's gonna do a high amount of threat to all the people that it's reflecting on. So you can almost hold aggro on a full mob just by AoE taunting and Saber Reflecting, because they're all gonna be getting damage on themselves, and you do extra threat. So it is a defensive. It's almost more of a active ability in your rotation, though, more than it is a defensive. So these are your two flat defensive cooldowns. This is your generic reduce all damage taken type of defensive. This one's mainly for melee and range, doesn't do a whole lot against force style attacks. Keep that in mind. Endure Pain is just kind of like a little crap button. So if you're super low on health, you can pop it. It's going to give you a little bit more, but your healers are going to have to burst you up, because when that runs out, that health goes away, so you might die anyways. But Endure Pain's also tied to your self cleanse, so keep that in mind if you have that talented. Enraged Defense, another kind of a crap button when you get low on health. Pop this every time you get hit. It's going to heal you for a pretty large chunk, and you should heal up real quick once you activate this. It's only got a 1.5-minute cooldown, so maybe you don't have to be too. When it comes to your actual active abilities, for my action bars, I use 1 through 4 and shift 1 through 4. These are my main things, and then retaliation on 6. And then I have my leap and my saber throw down here on the, along with my movement ability, which Mad Dash as a tank is a super useful tool to be able to move around quickly, and when you combine that with your leap, you can close pretty large distance. So I wouldn't use this as an attack as much as I would use it as like a force speed of ability. But a couple things to keep in mind. Try to use Furious Power with Crushing Blow. I'm really bad about it. I don't know why, but try to do it. Try to keep it in mind. It's the best way to do it. Aegis Assault always needs to be used before Crushing Blow. And if you do not use your Aegis Assault before you Crushing Blow, your Crushing Blow will not do an area effect. So if you are using that set bonus, make sure you do it in the right order. Otherwise, you're not going to get any benefit out of it whatsoever. Force Scream off cooldown, because in your passives, you do get a defense bonus for that. Ravage is super useful for damage. Backhand's a super high threat ability. Use it off cooldown. My fillers are my Saber Throw, Force Choke, and Vicious Slash is your primary filler. Be kind of careful if you need Rage. You don't really ever run into it if you're main tanking. If you're off tanking, you're probably not going to have any Rage anyways, just because that's how it works, and it's a big pain in the butt. But keep it in mind. Force Choke, useful, does more damage, does more threat, gives you some Rage if you need it. So my opener, when we go into this, I don't know if this is an optimal opener. This is what I use, and I don't taunt off the start, mainly because that's just a personal preference. I think it's more enjoyable because it makes you work a little bit harder to keep threat. Now, if you're doing progression and stuff, you might want to start getting into the habit of taunting off the start. I do it on a fight-by-fight basis depending on what the circumstances are. So if something gets accidentally pulled, obviously I'm going to taunt at the start because I'm not the one getting the first hit. But if I have time to get in there and get my Saber Reflect off, usually I've never had a problem with it. So, personal preference. I don't, especially in story mode, just because I think it makes me a little bit better at what I'm doing. But ideally, if you're starting, taunt out the gate, and then it's up to you whether or not you want to taunt throughout the fight. I like having my taunt in case stuff goes badly. So, my opener changes, kind of. I will always Saber Throw, Force Leap. That's a given every single time. Usually, right when I hit the boss, I will pop my Saber Reflect, and then Aegis Assault, Crushing Blow, Force Scream. Sometimes I go from Force Scream to a Smash. Most of the time, I will go Force Scream to Ravage to Backhand. Now, if I do use Smash, it still goes to Ravage Backhand following. But I would say more often than not, I am Aegis Assault, Crushing Blow, Force Scream, Ravage to Backhand. You'll be getting Retaliation procs as you parry and defend attacks. Use those as often as you can because you do get a defensive for using it. It's also off the global cooldown, so you could weave it in between your stuff. So for all intents and purposes, your opening is going to be a Saber Throw, a Force Sleep to Saber Reflect, Crushing or Aegis Assault, Furious Power, then Crushing Blow, Force Scream, Ravage, Backhand. And then you're going to go to fillers, weave your Retaliation in, use your Smash. It's kind of free flow when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like I said, I've never had an issue with threat when it comes to this. So I would experiment, maybe find a guild group or something, run through some flashpoints. If you have any other tanks that are in there that can help you, that's super useful. But don't be too intimidated by tanking. Not as scary as you might think. Especially if you've done the content you're going to try a couple times, maybe as a DPS or a healer, and you kind of know how the flow works and all that kind of stuff, you should have a perfectly fine time. And if you have a DPS in your group that you keep losing aggro to while you're learning, guards useful. You can guard them, and it's going to reduce the threat that they build. Most time, this is something you put on a healer because it's going to reduce the threat that they're generating from like ads that spawn throughout a fight or damage they take. Because if your healers are dead, everyone's going to die. So keep guard in mind if you need it. Other than that, that's about it when it comes to jug tanking for me, as far as abilities, rotations, and stuff like that. I guess I should mention AoE. When we go into an AoE pull, my abilities are going to change a little bit. So I'm still going to Saber Throw if I can, Leap, Aegis Assault, Crushing Blow because it is an area effect. I will usually throw my AoE taunt after that and then Saber Reflect. Always use these two together if you're going to AoE taunt, just because of the massive amount of threat you build with Saber Reflect. And then I'm going to go straight to Smash. And then I'll probably throw out a Chilling Scream and then maybe a couple Sweeping Slashes, and usually I don't have any issues with area threat either. You can you have some wiggle room there. Once you target whatever your highest priority enemy is in a pack, do your area and then kind of tab around, check your different enemies, make sure they're on you or the other tank in the group. If they're not, try to get them off your healers especially. Another thing before I let you guys go, if you do not have this enabled and you want to tank, make sure you enable it in your interface edit. Target of target, you scroll down, enable it, you can change your buff scales and all that kind of stuff in there. But that's going to make it to where you can see, ideally you're targeting a boss or an enemy, you can see if it's targeting you or not. Make sure this is enabled. It's not very smart to tank without it. So if it's not there, get it there and you should be fine. Super straightforward, not a whole lot to it. You also have a push, which is useful. You can move stuff around. Not everybody has one, so a small utility to keep in mind for certain fights like Revan and things like that. You can try to help out a little bit. But yeah, that's about it. When it comes to jug tanking, again, bare bones, super basic guide just to get people up and running, to learn how to play the class. Once they start playing the class, if they enjoy playing it, they're gonna learn all the little tips and tricks and things like that that you can do, set bonuses, tacticals, things like that. So I'm sure I've missed a few things in this guide, but it's not supposed to be a full in-depth guide. It's supposed to just be enough to get somebody who is brand new to the spec in 6.0 to start playing the spec. Because the more tanks that we have running around, the better. Same thing with healers. The next on the list I'm going to do probably will be Corruption Sorcerer for healing. That might be a little bit more in depth because there are things you need to know when you go in to heal on a Sork, that's going to be the next one. But that'll do it for this one. I will see you in the Corruption Sorcerer Guide.